Welcome to VCR, Vintage Cinema Rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers. I'm Blake.
And I am about to turn 32.
Pew, 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 32.
Yeah. Wow.
And because of that, it's your choice of movies this month. Or this week,
Yeah.
at least, because we've got horror movies coming up. And
So once a year, Blake throws me a bone and lets me pick something.
once you're on your birthday, somebody else gets a pick at movies.
Yeah. Actually, that's not fair. You let me do Rocky.
Yeah.
So I was, and you were kind of against it, but I just was like, I want to do Rocky.
I share movie picks.
Yeah.
Usually what actually happens is I come up with a big list, and then you decide, narrow it down from there, and we talk about it, and then we pick something.
Yeah, every few weeks you'll send me a list, and I'll
Just
like,
when I'm vibing, you know?
Yeah, and I'll just kind of glance at it and be like, yeah, that one looks good.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens.
Would you like to take a look at my wares, Michael?
Yeah, I picture you as like you're wearing a trench coat in a back alley, and you're just like, hey, or like that guy from Resident Evil 4, like, whoa, what are you buying?
I was thinking of Recess. And like the kid.
Yeah, that kid.
Yeah. I was totally that kid.
Yeah, no, you totally were. You had the trench coat and everything. But
No school shootings, but no, I didn't have a trench coat.
Some equally questionable decisions.
Oh man.
So, can I just say before we get into it, this
Yep.
is one of my all-time favorite movies. It is probably my top 5.
Really?
And it is,
Wow.
without a doubt, my all-time favorite Batman movie.
Ooh, I have thoughts
Yeah.
about that later. Because we're talking Batman Mask the Phantasm today.
Yep, the 1993 little movie that could, and as it turned out, didn't at first.
At first.
Yeah, but
And then did later on.
Yeah, but I think it's picked up a really strong following over the years, right?
Yeah.
I have this
absolutely.
theory that if you release something to the media and it's good enough, it will eventually just pick up steam.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of those movies.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of this movie is very high for the most part, I'll say. Like, I'll put a slight asterisk on that because we'll talk about some stuff later. That almost feels like it's out of the creator's hands, like, studio meddling kind of stuff that you kind of tend to feel bad about. But yeah, no, it's a solid movie, and I'm glad that you picked this one because I'd never seen this one, and I've always been, aware of it.
Right.
Batman's always been my guy.
My guy.
And
yeah.
so I've seen every other Batman movie except for this one. So it's good to round it out, and we'll talk about maybe where it sits in my Batman filmography after.
So you were watching this last night with your lovely wife, and then the Xbox 360 achievement sound popped up. Being
Yes.
10 gamer score. You've
Platinum.
You've seen every Batman movie. Good job.
Yep. I've seen every Batman movie now. You can give me a medal, I guess. Well, actually, that's a lie. I haven't seen, if people are going to get real technical, I haven't seen was it Brian West?
The Adam West one?
Adam West,
oh,
yeah. Adam West.
From the 60s, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I haven't seen that movie.
We should watch that at some point.
We should watch
Maybe
that
we'll,
at some time.
Maybe we'll do that when I turn 33. And you know what? We're just kind of getting right into it. I'm excited. But what a weird space Batman occupies in pop culture.
Yeah.
Right? It's very, there was the famous 60s. So I will just say I watched this movie. I've seen this movie a lot, but I watched it last night with my mom for this because I happened to be visiting her.
And her first time watching it?
Her first time watching
Cool.
it, yeah. And she was pointing out, as serious and oppressively sad as this movie is, there's some punches and fights where my mom kept making the the pow bam sound effects, right?
Nice.
Right. So you've got that, and then in the 70s and 80s, Batman pivots into this weird, dark, brooding figure.
Right.
If there was a alien studying our culture and you showed him the 1960s Adam West movie, and then you showed him the 2022 Robert Pattinson version, he'd be like, how are these the same character? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's interesting how it kind of, you're right, it does kind of match up with the vibe of the times, right? The Batman is definitely a 2020s film.
Yeah, and then the 1960s version was obviously there was probably a lot of drugs inspired in it.
But what about the Batman vs Superman? What times was that?
See, and this is how much I should also say I'm a massive Batman fanboy.
Right.
I read The Dark Knight Returns when I was 16, and it was totally blown away by it. I think I tried giving it to you, but you were just like, it's not for me, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fair enough. But honestly, and this might get us canceled before we've even arrived, but I kind of like Batman versus Superman. I don't really think it deserves the hate that it gets.
It's not great.
Yeah.
I don't share the same opinion as you, but that's fine. It's opinions. Who cares?
Yeah, that's opinions. They're like assholes. Who cares? And mine is a little shittier, obviously. But yeah, no, but
that's okay. I love plenty of like mid-tier, low-budget horror movies, so
that's true. So I guess we're even on that front.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I'm turning 32. It was my turn to pick the movie, and I thought about it for all of 1 second, and then I just went, I think we'll do Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And here we are.
Nice. Yeah, no, and I'm glad you picked this one. Like I said, it's been in my peripherals. I wouldn't say necessarily on my list. I've been aware of it, but I haven't watched it. So I don't want to spoil like too many of my thoughts before we get into the deep dive episode, because this is the primer episode. This is kind of like the, letting you know spoiler free if this movie is for you or not. And so I think we start there, and I'll try to keep my opinion unbiased, and then we'll talk about maybe who this movie is for, does it hold up, and all that fun stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we jump into a plot
I think
summary?
we should jump in the plot.
Okay, let's do that. So it's Batman, and it's Gotham City. You know the drill. Dead parents, makes a vow, fights crime, does those big flamboyant punches with the sound effects and everything.
Even that, I'll say as well, like, you just brought up all the Batman origin stuff. It dwells on the Batman origin, but we don't have to see Batman's parents. We don't have to see Bruce Wayne's parents get murdered.
And I think actually that's what makes this movie kind of modern. What makes it hold up a little better is like, I remember before the R-Pats version came out, a bunch of people were like, are we going to see Thomas and Martha Wayne die again? I'm so sick of watching these assholes get gunned down. And then that movie wisely omitted that scene, and so does this movie, right? And I guess that's the other thing we should jump into, is that this is very much an offshoot of the animated series that blew up in the 90s.
Yes.
Right? With Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, all that stuff. Like, if you approach a man around our age, so like in his early to mid 30s, and you start humming the Batman theme song, you'll see like tears of joy just streaming down his cheeks, right?
You want to hear something wild?
What?
I haven't seen a single episode of the Batman animated series. Yeah.
Well, everyone, this has been Vintage Cinema Rewind. This has been Michael, and this is my last
time to pack it in.
Yeah. I will say, I get it. It is okay. I say that.
I don't know why I missed it. Honestly, I probably would have enjoyed it, but I never saw it.
I think it was slightly before our time.
Yeah,
because it blew up. I think
92 is when it started, I believe, and then to 95 or 96 is the original run.
So like 92, you and I were just being born.
Yeah, exactly.
We were blinking our first blinks.
I wasn't even born yet, so
you were getting there. But anyways, it was slightly before time. I've gone back and watched some of the classic episodes, and like, they're a little clunky and dated here and there, but like, it really holds up. Like, a lot of shows from back then, or even older shows or newer shows, don't hold up. It really holds up. It's got this gorgeous like Art Deco film noir style. Like, it's got these really clean designs. The show was famously like drawn on black paper.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it was dark.
Yeah.
So anyways,
it was the 90s.
It was the 90s. Yeah. It was a little bit before the emo craze, but it was kind of predicting it.
Nice.
So anyways, yeah, plot summary. So basically the plot is pretty simple. There's this mysterious new vigilante called the Phantasm who's going around and he's knocking off elderly gangsters. And of course, being a weird, mysterious, black-cloaked vigilante, people automatically start assuming that Batman has gone off his rocker and has started murdering people, right?
Yep.
So suddenly, things have gotten more complicated for good old Batman, and then things get even worse when a certain mysterious old flame arrives in the city.
Right.
A certain Andrea Beaumont.
Yes, that brings up a lot of old memories, and that's where this movie cuts back to the early days of Batman, like as he's returned from wherever he
was,
and he's learned jujitsu, and he's
which is no joke.
Yes,
and he says explicitly it's no joke in this movie.
That's so true.
Yeah,
but he's just like he's just kind of starting to figure things out. Like he's trying to think how he's gonna avenge his parents and leave his legacy or his parents' legacy, what that means to him and everything.
Yeah,
and it's like this is a very pivotal moment, and he's and this woman was obviously very important to that time in his life, and it's really interesting being a big fan of Batman and the Dark Knight and all of those series and never hearing of Andrea Beaumont before.
Yeah.
Because right from the get-go, I think that's something that when you get into this movie, they have like a lot of chemistry together. Like they're two very well written characters opposite each other.
Yeah, and it's like, again, I should say this movie is 77 minutes long. It is barely even a movie, but like
Don't say that. Those movies are movies too. Those are maybe the best movies. The movies that you get it over with in an hour and 15 minutes, hour 20 minutes.
Right. I was being a little deprecating, but like I should say it's a strength of this movie that they really have two scenes together and you're instantly kind of like, yeah, I'd buy it.
Yep.
No, I believe it. Like, you know how sometimes like your friend meets someone and you just look at them and you're like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the plot summary.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't even share any more than that, really. Like, that's really all you need to know.
And just taking a step back, I like that this movie explores like a very interesting time in Batman's career where like he's returned from overseas, he's completed all his training, he's clearly like a certified badass, but like he hasn't quite figured out what he needs to do just yet.
Yeah, or like, yeah, exactly.
He's in like the very early stages
well,
of his
that's in the
career.
flashbacks. Like, this is years later in what's happening in the current time. Like, there's the two periods, and sometimes it does get slightly confusing at which period you might be in for the first, like, minute or so, depending on what cuts where. But it's very distinct, like, that we actually spend probably in the first 2/3 of the movie more time in flashbacks in, you know, year 1 and year 2 of Batman's crime fighting career.
Yeah, I mean, it's this movie is like 45-50% flashback.
Yeah,
which could work to its detriment. I was actually just telling you about a book I'm reading right now that does a similar thing where, like, you know, the chapters alternate between time periods, and I find one time period very interesting and another time period very not so interesting. This movie actually it pops on both levels.
Yeah,
you know, it really
does.
It does a non-linear narrative really, really well.
Yes,
and which is even more impressive considering this was like a kids movie.
Yeah.
Although, okay, I'm gonna derail the conversation again. You know, if you ever have kids, like, at what age would you show them this movie?
I don't know that I would consider this a kids movie. Like, you said it was a kids movie, but I actually disagree. I think this is a pretty mature adult take on the Dark Knight.
Batman. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was what made the animated series so laudable, is how mature and complicated it could be.
Yeah, like I don't think you would show anybody under a teenager this, because
who's gonna get it?
Yeah,
I think I was around 16 when I saw this movie for the first time, and like I got it.
I think this movie gets better as you get older, if anything.
Yeah.
And you see, like, you know, you kind of look back on your own past and the decisions that you made leading up to where you got to, and even like maybe not even the decisions that you made, but the decisions that were made for you and stuff like that, right? Like, and regrets and all that sort of thing. Like, that's really what this movie is about. And I think that if you're like under 25, you haven't really had that yet.
Yeah. Don't worry, life is coming for you, kiddos.
Yeah, like,
you'll have regrets.
I don't know that I would have liked this movie as much if I wasn't in my 30s now.
I've seen this movie multiple times, and like I do get a new appreciation for it every time. You know, especially the movie really, you know, it focuses around heartbreak.
Yep.
And you know, as someone who's experienced a great heartbreak recently, like it does, I'm like, this hits a bit different. Like, I'm looking at Batman like in his squinty eyes, and I'm just like,
somebody give that man a hug.
Yeah, basically. And actually, if I can just say, one of the reasons I love this movie so much is just how fucking sad it is.
Yeah.
There's this heavy, looming, just melancholy that just oppresses everything.
Yeah, and that was definitely a choice, right? And actually, that's one choice in the creation of this movie, like, and the thinking of the structure of this. Like, they essentially wanted every flashback to be darker and sadder than the next.
Yeah,
and start
really
off like borderline exciting and happy, and maybe there's hope for this man who's had this tragic backstory, and just watch as that all kind of evaporates.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm kind of vaguely remembering a meme where it's like, what was that? Like, it was like a fake newspaper headline from a few years ago where it's like, man who thought he lost all hope loses additional bit of hope that he didn't know he had. It's really interesting, like the whole structure and like the way this movie is like presented, where it's kind of like it very much feels like an offshoot of like a 1940s movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that like film noir style, and then there are other scenes that kind of feel like, you know, a love story or a melodrama from the 40s, like even down to the dialogue, right?
Right.
It's got a very snappy, quippy.
Yep.
Like I think one of my favorite moments is when Bruce Wayne is at a gala and one of his other old flames has just embarrassed him, and then there's this guy named Artie who we'll talk about more later. He comes over and he kind of admonishes Bruce. He gives him a handkerchief because this woman has thrown her drink in his face.
Right.
And then he starts admonishing Bruce for being too much of a playboy and like chides him about Andrea, his lost love. And Bruce Wayne, he just goes, "Thanks for the handkerchief, Artie. You know where you can stick it." And I was like, yeah, that's right out of the 40s.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, before we spoil too much of the movie, we should get through the rest of the primer episode and and then get into our deep dive.
Okay. I mean, it's going to be quite a deep dive because there's a lot
Yes.
to say about this movie. Yeah.
So, characters and people you may know, obviously this is a Batman movie, voiced by Kevin Conroy, who I didn't realize was actually as prolific as he was, like, in doing Batman.
Oh,
like,
really?
I didn't realize that he was the voice of all the Batman video games, and I've played through all the Arkham games, and they're all fantastic, and he's great in all of those. He just recently passed away, actually.
Very sad. Very sad. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
He was like...
I mean, he's basically like the Batman of any animated or non-live action medium.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was Batman. I think Tara Strong said that, like, if you're talking about just sheer man hours, he is the most prolific Batman of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even more so than Adam West.
Even more so that, especially Adam West. Yeah. But, no, yeah, it's truly incredible. And, like, he doesn't. So DC did like a Pride Month thing a couple years ago, and he wrote a comic explaining his life story about how, like, he grew up in an abusive home with like lots of alcoholism and lots of abuse, and then he found out he was gay at an early age, which, like, you know, was not a good thing like back then. So like he had to hide his identity, and he got into acting, and then, you know, in the 80s, a lot of his friends in the industry just died of AIDS. So then one day his agent just sent him to this audition, and he didn't really know much about Batman, but he just looked at it. And because he had this background in like Shakespeare and classical theater, and then of course, you know, his own struggles with like abuse and like hiding his identity. Like he talks about during that first recording session, like this deep, painful voice just rose up from his throat, and that was Batman.
Wow.
Yeah. And I guess like the creators of the show were pulling their hair out. Like they'd auditioned thousands of people and they couldn't find the right voice, but just that day they just hired him on the spot.
Wow.
They're just like, "You're Batman, bro."
That's wild.
Yeah. So like, again, really an amazing guy, really an amazing story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. What is that called? Where he
wrote
the
comic?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't actually know.
You gotta tell people, like, that was a great story.
Yeah, that was a great story.
Now I want to know what it was.
Yeah, so the comic was just called Finding Batman by Kevin Conroy.
Cool. Yeah. I think I might check that out, honestly. It sounded really interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Do you have it?
No, I don't.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. Anyway, so we talked about Andrea Beaumont already. She's the opposite of Bruce Wayne in this movie. She's part of a wealthy family. Her dad was a businessman who may or may not be involved in some shady things. Spoilers, he is. And so, like I said, just a really, really good opposite to Bruce in this movie. And I think that's probably the biggest highlight of this film is just how their relationship plays off each other. Like, I actually think that she is a better romantic interest for him than, I can't even remember what her name is.
Selena Kyle? Catwoman?
No, not Selena Kyle. Like the Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Oh, Rachel Dawes?
Yes, and the Rachel Dawes type of character. I actually think that there's a lot more interesting like connection that these two characters share, and I think there's more chemistry as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I was kind of blown away that I'd never seen these two characters interact before, and that this story wasn't actually the more like,
You'd think they would have done more with this character, but she really only appears in this movie.
Well, yeah, and like I don't want to get into too many spoilers necessarily, and like I don't know that this character necessarily needs to be like, just show what's this character's up to all the time, but just like I think that this character could be brought back in a live action way that would, I think, a lot of people who probably haven't seen this movie would just be blown away by.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, Patrick H. Willems, a video essayist that I'm fond of, he famously said that, like, if this movie were live action, people would lose their minds and call it the greatest superhero movie of all time.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with that, honestly. Like, it's very good. The other character that doesn't show up in as many Batman media appearances is Arthur Reeves, the lawyer turned politician who just sees Batman as just as much of a criminal as all the other criminals that Batman tends to catch.
A real slimy kind of public official.
Yeah.
Congressman, yeah.
Yeah, he's like he's a very charming guy, but he's a little bit of a slime ball, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And who is he played by?
I actually don't remember.
Oh.
Do you?
Oh, shit.
What did you?
I actually looked. No, Arthur Reeves. He's played by the guy from Die Hard. He's played by the guy who played Ellis from Die Hard.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yeah, wow.
That's hilarious.
Is this the one time I stumped you with some trivia?
I didn't see that. Oh my god, Ellis.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Like Joker, Bubby. Yeah.
That's awesome. I had no idea.
So if you remember the asshole from Die Hard, that's the same guy who voices Arthur Reeves.
That's amazing. That is such good casting.
I know, right? And like he's probably a really nice guy in real life, but like he just plays slime balls so well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And then after that, we've got all of the other kind of characters that frequent the Batman universe, like Alfred, obviously. We get maybe like, middle-aged and then older Alfred because of the time jumps.
Yeah, you can tell like what time period you're in, whether or not he has like... So Alfred is always balding, but like if his remaining tufts of hair are black, you're in the past. If they're white, you're in the present.
And his mustache.
Oh, yeah, the mustache, too. I forgot about that.
You could tell which time period it is by the color of Alfred's hair. I loved that part.
Yeah. Well, good for him. He kept his black for a long time. But I did find it funny. There's one scene where, like, Alfred is, like, he's driving the limo and he's wearing his, like, really, really elaborate, like, chauffeur outfit. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, like, this fucking guy, does like Bruce insists that he put on a chauffeur outfit every time he drives him around? Or is Alfred just like, no, Master Wayne, this is the job?
No, that's definitely an Alfred thing.
Yeah, he's like, yes.
That's like a butler thing, Like you do your job and you do it well.
Yeah, right. He's got an outfit for every occasion.
100%. Well, and if you're going to a formal event, you're going to get somebody to dress up nice too.
Yeah, for like even our chauffeur looks great.
Yeah.
Uber drivers should bring that back. They should all wear that outfit.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, like there's the other obvious character, the character in the room, the elephant in the room, the Joker in the room, Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker.
And this is his first appearance as the Joker, I believe?
He'd been on the animated series before, but I believe Mark Hamill said that, like, this was the moment when, like, he finally cracked the voice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and he obviously becomes, like, an iconic Joker voice actor in his own right? Like, he's maybe not the first actor that you think of when you think of the Joker, but definitely fans of the animated series would have.
He's definitely in the same way that Kevin Conroy is my favorite Batman, Mark Hamill is my favorite Joker.
Nice.
Like he really embodies that role so well.
Yes, it's a very different. It's a more comic book approach to the character, I think, than the Dark Knight,
for sure.
But it is very iconic.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other voice actors in here, too, that I was going to mention.
Can I just say before we get into it, like, the Joker's, like, his dialogue is so great. Like, just the way, like, just, I probably shouldn't say anything until the spoiler section, but, like, even the Joker is kind of a spoiler. Like, he doesn't even show up till halfway through the movie.
Yeah, I was hesitant to say him, but you already mentioned Mark Hamill, so anybody who knows is going to already know, and if you don't, like... this is a selling feature. The Joker is involved in this movie.
No, and he's fantastic in this movie, right? Yep. Again, considering that he's a relatively secondary...
He's literally in the last third of the movie. He's in the last act of the film.
Yeah, basically. But when he shows up, you're just like, oh, fuck, it's the Joker.
You know what, though? There is a moment where a character makes an appearance, and I was like, oh, I know who that character is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that, but... I just want to mention a couple of the other voice actors because there's obviously like all of the gangsters that you mentioned that are getting knocked off. They're actually all played by like big voice actors, or not even necessarily big voice actors, just big, interesting character actors. So Abe Vigoda plays Sal in this movie. He actually plays Sal in the Godfather in the first movie, Godfather Part 1.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you've got Dick Miller, who's like a famous character actor. He was in Little Shop of Horrors. He was in Piranha. He was in Gremlins. Like pretty much any cult movie you could name, he's probably involved in it in some way. Like we've literally talked about him multiple times or talked about movies he's involved in multiple times at this point.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Bennett, who's a very famous voice actor as well. Voices... I can't remember who Jeff Bennett does, but he's like, I literally was like just looking down the list. He just plays Burton Ernie in this one, but he's like Johnny Bravo and like a million other voice actors.
This is where he kind of got his start. This is where we broke his vocal cords in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really cool. Like there was some really cool voice actors in this movie. Who this movie is for doesn't hold up to a modern watch. Okay. So we already kind of talked about this a little bit. Like I'm thinking that this is more for adults and, you know, probably 25 plus, honestly. Once life's kind of come at you a little bit more.
I don't know that you could show this to like I don't know. Could you show this to like a 16-year-old today and be like, here, watch this, right? I will say, and like, I love this movie, but like, there is a little bit of, I don't know how to even phrase it. A little bit of just clunkiness at times.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of like, you know, I think it's just a sign of the times. It's not even really the movie's fault, but like, there are a couple like moments of just like, some awkward close-ups or like dead air where you're just like, huh? And then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely that. I think, you know, we'll talk about it more in the deep dive, but this is hand-drawn animation, so in and of itself, like that's a little bit dated and that can be hit or miss. Like there's some really beautiful hand-drawn stuff like out there from Disney and other, you know, other animation studios. I think that this one's kind of a mixed bag. That's probably like one of the only critiques that I have of this. And again, it's studio involvement that's actually more the fault of that. And I don't really want to talk about it too much in the spoiler-free episode, but...
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when you think about like, you know, maybe how much time they had to make this movie and like what it was originally intended for, it's kind of a miracle it looks as good as it does.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to answer your question, I'd say, yeah, slightly older in a demographic is going to get more out of this. Does it hold up? Again, there is a little bit of jank here and there, but like I think it really, really holds up.
If I had to like rate whether it holds up as a film, I give it like an 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. I would do the same. 8.5 for me.
Yeah, like it's high. Like it holds up for the most part with a couple of small asterisks to it.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I think that most people are going to enjoy this. It's just your mileage may vary depending on how old you are. I think the older you are, the more... you know, the more time and experience you've had, the more I think you're going to relate to something like this.
I think you could show this to like a sad teenager and they would really like it.
Yeah.
As a former sad teenager, I was like, wow, this is deep. This movie gets me.
Yeah.
And then as a less sad 32-year-old, I'm like, wow, this movie still gets me.
I actually have a question for you. Which live action movie out of any Batman movie if you're a fan of that live action movie, would you recommend going and watching this one too?
I think probably Matt Reeves's The Batman from 2022. And I think, and I don't know this for sure, I think our Pats even said that like they looked to this movie for like inspiration.
Yes.
When they were making theirs.
Yes,
so...
that is correct, and I think that is honestly the most correct answer. Like you could make
well, I think both films are very concerned with like the psychology of Batman and like the inner workings of Batman. And like, you know, Batman Begins actually is probably a close second maybe in that it did something similar. But then, you know, by like The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, it's kind of what I should say, like a lot of Batman fans only like Batman for the villains. And I mean, you can't really blame them. I mean, Batman has the most interesting villains in, you know, pop culture, right?
Definitely.
Like the Joker, Ra's al Ghul, like the Scarecrow, whatever, right?
Yep.
But like me, I've always been more interested in Batman himself as a character and like what is going on under the cowl. In this movie, in the 2022 The Batman, I think really are focused on that as well.
Yes, and that was, in my opinion, I had the same answer as that. Is definitely the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could probably watch them both back to back.
Actually, you know what? Now that I'm saying this, I think maybe Batman Begins might be a little bit closer. But no, I'd go with the Batman.
I still think it's the Batman, but I think you could make an argument that Batman Begins. But I'm actually less of a fan of Batman Begins, which we've talked about before. Like it's fine, but it's not. It's definitely not in my top 5 Batman movies.
Oh, really?
No.
I haven't seen Batman Begins in a long time, but I think I would really like it again if I watched it.
Yeah, there's at some point I've got to do another round of that trilogy again. It's been a while. I usually do it like once every 3-4 years. Watch that trilogy,
something like that. Yeah,
but. Hey, you know what? That's kind of an interesting conversation that the Dark Knight series doesn't really get brought up as a trilogy all that often. I wonder if it's just because of like how frequent we get Batman movies, but like, you know, there's always conversations to like best trilogies of all time, and I don't think that that's the best trilogy of all time, but you know,
it's up there.
It's definitely a good trilogy, and it has like, you know, the Dark Knight is considered
one of the greatest movies of all time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I rewatched The Dark Knight a few years ago, and I was like, yep, holds up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's fantastic.
I'm not even a huge Christopher Nolan fan. Like, I thought Oppenheimer was fucking boring, and come at me, film bros. I don't care, but...
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I really remember liking Batman Begins and The Dark Knight.
Yeah. And I even like The Dark Knight Rises. I know you have a lot more...
I don't even hate The Dark Knight Rises, but I rewatched The Dark Knight a few years ago, and I'm like, this movie's fucking awesome. And then I tried rewatching The Dark Knight Rises, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay, and I turned it off. But I did see it in theaters like 3 times when it came out.
Fair enough.
So
yeah, I definitely watched that one at least twice in theaters.
I think I saw it with you and John in theaters.
Yeah, probably. And then I also saw it at the drive-in once. I think I saw it one other time in theaters. That was maybe the first movie, The Dark Knight Rises, maybe the first movie I saw 3 times in theaters. It doesn't happen very often.
But it
Not
does
very often,
happen.
no, but it does happen. So one scene to sell the movie. Which scene are you going with to pitch this one to somebody who hasn't seen this movie before?
Well, ironically, I think it's called Batman Begins on Movie Clips.
That's the same one as me. You guessed it right.
And you know what? I've actually watched that clip on Movie Clips many, many times over
Really?
the years. Yeah, so I don't even think we can really talk about it just because of, you know...
I mean, we're sharing something that we're trying to sell on a spoiler-free, like, go check this out, and if you like this.
I guess all I'll say is that it's the scene where Bruce Wayne officially becomes Batman.
Yes.
Like, he puts on the cape and cowl for the first time.
You know what, though? I think that the context of that scene is going to change a lot when you actually watch the movie, though. Thinking about it, I think that, you know, like, the reaction that you get from Alfred, I think the context of that is huge. And, you know, it's exciting in when you see it, but I think it takes on a much different...
it's a very different emotion when you watch it in
Yes.
The full context of the movie.
Yes. So I agree. I think that is the definitive scene. I was kind of flicking through before we started, and I was like, oh, this is it, basically. Like I didn't even look at the rest of the scenes. I was like, yeah, this is the one. So
that is the one. I mean, I barely even glanced at the list, but I was instantly like, my eyes just locked on that scene. I was like, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I agree. When to watch? For me, this is a Friday night movie. Even like you could put it on as like your late night movie, like it's 78 minutes. It's perfect. I love a movie like, you know, this is an after dark kind of movie. Like it's Batman. It
is dark. There are very few daytime scenes.
Yeah. And
there's a couple.
But that's Batman in general, right? Like Gotham City's always painted as this always nighttime, like the city never sleeps kind of city. And I think that that's honestly just the best time to watch it. And again, I love finding a good 78-minute movie to just finish my night off with, and this is perfect for that.
Yeah. I watched it last night, which was Sunday night. I think that's also a good time to watch it because you'll get nice and depressed right before Monday. Just like,
So, where to watch? Right now it's streaming on Crave, which is fantastic that it's on there because I have Crave and I watched it on Crave.
Fuck, is it on Crave? I rented it off YouTube.
Dummy, you need to look at Just Watch. We put it in the link on the description because that's the easiest way to find movies. We're not sponsored by them, but we would love to be if you're listening. Just Watch.
Yeah.
But
I was visiting my mom and she has Crave. I didn't even have to drop $5 on it.
Yeah.
I could have just been like,
It's literally on Crave. The animated series might be on Crave too. I didn't actually look that up.
I think it might be on HBO Max. I don't know.
If it's on HBO Max, then you might get it through Crave, depending on who pays for your Crave.
Who pays for your
Spoilers.
Crave?
It's not me.
There you go.
And I think that's it for the primer episode. So I hope that you go and check this one out. I
do too.
Yeah, most people will enjoy this one. Do you have anything left to say about this before we get into the deep dive?
No, just come back next week. I have a lot to say about this movie.
Cool. All right, we'll see you next time. Tell your dad.
Tell your dad.
And your mom, and also maybe your emo brother.
Yeah. If you know anyone who's really, really sad, show them this movie. Or actually, maybe don't.
I'm just thinking of like Wedding Crashers, where Todd's like, "Death, you're my bitch lover,"
Yeah,
and he's like, "You tell that mean ocean, son."
Yeah,
that's the person that you want to show this movie to.
Yeah. Wait, the person screaming at the ocean, or the person encouraging the person screaming at the ocean?
Both.
Yeah, they'll both they could bond over this.
Yeah.
The encouraging person.
That's all Todd needed, was a little bit of bonding with his dad over the Batman, the Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, really. And then he cheered right up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you understand me, father. All right. Anyway.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
Don't cut any of this.